Before the first debate, the principal economic pointers, September 26, 2016. I am Gopalan Ramachandran, Ramach to my friends and associates, and my email is upturnmanifesto@gmail.com. Mr. Donald Trump and Senator Hillary Clinton meet at today's first presidential debate. What we should know and what we should look for. First, gross domestic product or GDP. The gap between potential GDP and realized GDP has remained a gap all through the recovery. The blue line has stayed above the red line. The gap has widened a bit recently. The data goes up to the first quarter of this year, 2016. Source: U.S. Congressional Budget Office, CBO. Real potential GDP is the CBO's estimate of the output the economy would produce with a high rate of use of its, that's the economy's, capital and labor resources. The data is adjusted to remove the effects of inflation. The emphasis is on a high rate of use of the economy's capital and labor resources. Availability is not the problem. In order to accomplish a high rate of use of the economy's capital and labor resources, there should be greater demand. In order to accomplish a high rate of use of the economy's capital and labor resources, let's state this once again, there should be greater demand. Enhancing money supply is one way to trigger greater demand. Enhancing federal spending is a second way to trigger greater demand. Enhancing after-tax personal incomes by cutting the personal income tax rate is a third way to trigger greater demand. Take note, cutting the corporate tax rate may have little impact on demand from households. It may have an impact on investment, but the economy is not dealing with a shortage of capital or investments. What about the assessment of monetary policy? There's been a surge of liquidity since 2008. The federal funds rate has been between 0.25% and 0.50%. The near zero Fed funds rate is a result of the massive loosening. Families, firms, and government have not been evenly served, however. Non-financial corporations and government have been the biggest and the principal beneficiaries of the non-zero Fed funds rate. Households and families have not been the principal beneficiaries of the massive surge in liquidity. This is wholly dysfunctional since all savings, profits, and taxes are wholly produced by households and families. Households are classified by the Census Bureau as family households and non-family households. And the good news, real median income of family households rose for the first time in 2015 since 2007. It's difficult to ignore the association between declining and or static real median income of family households with the near zero Fed funds rate. The graphic proof here. Real median household income rose for the first time in 2015 to $56,500. If you combine family and non-family households, the real median household income has risen a couple of times in the past, but the new level, the one below $57,000, is still below the old level in 2007 when it was above $57,000 per annum. There's a little more disconcerting proof that households haven't really done well. 1 in 6 households receives food stamps, continues to receive food stamps, and there's been a declining labor force participation. Labor force participation was 66% in 2006. It's now down to 63%. Moreover, people not in the labor force, measured in thousands, has risen too. So we need to ask this question: what's the significance of minimum wages when people aren't there in the labor force? Good news again, households have borrowed less. There's been a major deleveraging from about 97.5% to about 80% in the recovery. But there's a bit of bad news. Student loans have surged to nearly $1 trillion. What used to be about $100 billion is now $1 trillion. Getting the young to work is very important, perhaps the most important task and objective. Let's move on to public debt. Public debt too has surged to over 100% of GDP. The ability of government to borrow is very important to fund its spending, and therefore we needed to look at this. Total public debt has surged, and national debt is now nearly $20 trillion. It used to be a little over $10 trillion in January 2009. But where has all the money gone? Spending on infrastructure has declined, especially from 2010. Government gross investment as a share of GDP has fallen throughout the recovery. As a consequence, infrastructure is aging. Infrastructure has aged more since 2010 in all classes of infrastructure: highways and streets, hospitals and nursing homes, power plants and power lines, schools and colleges, and public transit, airports and ports. The first presidential debate may point to what the candidates have in their minds. The venue of the debate: Hofstra University. Thank you for watching this video. I am Gopalan Ramachandran Ramach. And don't forget, my email is upturnmanifesto@gmail.com.